Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSPmagazine. You're listening to a new Redefining Security podcast. Have you ever thought that we are selling cybersecurity insincerely, buying it indiscriminately, and deploying it ineffectively? Perhaps we are. So let's look at how we can organize a successful InfoSec program that integrates people, process, technology, and culture to drive growth and protect business value. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
Imperva is the cybersecurity leader whose mission is to protect data and all paths to it with a suite of integrated application and data security solutions. Learn more at imperva.com.
Pantera, the leader in automation security validation, allows organizations to continuously test the integrity of all cybersecurity layers by emulating real-world attacks at scale to pinpoint the exploitable vulnerabilities and prioritize remediation towards business impact. Learn more at pantera.io.
Marco.
Sean, thank you for the invitation.
I know. I've been doing these shows on my own for a little bit now. It's always fun having you on, though.
Feeling lonely? Do you just talk to yourself?
I feel lonely talking to myself.
No, I think you have guests. Come on.
I have amazing guests, thankfully.
You do.
But it's always fun having you on. You always bring a good and different perspective. I'm glad I wrangled you away from the bird alternative. I know you've been spending some time there lately. As I'm,
I'm trying to recognize bird. I have my binocular, and I play that hobby, but I'm not good at it. So I think I'm going to try to spot something bigger.
There you go.
Yeah, bigger size.
Bigger size. Well, talking about a person with a big personality in the InfoSec world, and somebody who's done something amazing to keep us all together as the world of social media is in a bit of disarray, perhaps. And that's Jerry Bell. Jerry, thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
And you stood up a Mastodon server, and it's called InfoSec.Exchange. And I may be getting the terms wrong, so correct me where I misspeak. But it's an alternative to Twitter and perhaps other social media sites that allow people with like minds and interests and desires to get together. And you've done that for the InfoSec community. And Marco and I joined recently and see a lot of our friends there. And it's
24,000 of your closest friends.
That's right. That's really cool. So before we get into that, though, I want to learn a little bit more about Jerry, and then we'll talk about what it took to set that up, stand that up, and keep it going. But what are you up to, Jerry? Who is Jerry?
So I work during the day as the Chief Information Security Officer for IBM Cloud. So an exciting job, pretty great place, actually. I also run a podcast for the past 10 years called Defensive Security. This is actually our 10th year. It is
Congratulations. That's huge.
On again, off again lately. The job keeps me quite busy. Family's getting older, so things have to stabilize a bit, and hopefully I get back on a schedule.
The schedule is good. The schedule is good, and we know very well what it takes to organize and record and produce and get the word out for all these things. And speaking of getting the word out, let's shift to InfoSec.Exchange on Mastodon. When did you set that up?
Sure. I set it up actually in April, way back in April of 2017. And somebody recently asked me why I did it, and I have to tell you, I don't even remember. It's been so long ago. I like to tinker with things, and at the time, I bought started renting a small VPS from a hosting provider, set up Mastodon, and a tiny little community grew. and there were never any more than maybe 5 or 10 people on it at any given time, up until actually I would say maybe April, May of this year, when the initial volley of Twitter fun started happening. I don't remember the exact sequence of what happened when, but I think Elon Musk made a comment about buying Twitter, and that caused a mass exodus, minor mass exodus, to my server, and that actually it died. I mean, just be frank, it was a pretty terrible experience, and so I quickly realized that the VPS was just not going to cut it, and I wasn't really looking forward to spending a lot of money on it, and so I worked with some people in the community to try to find an economical way to host it, and so I ended up renting a bare metal system at a provider called Hetzner, and it actually worked quite well. Worked pretty well up until about October 27th, in fact.
That seems like a familiar date there.
Yes. Go ahead.
So just quickly, because I don't know if all of our listeners will know what Mastodon is. So I don't know if you can share your view on what is. I kind of gave an overview of my perspective, but what's the real gist of Mastodon? Why does it exist?
It's a great question. So Mastodon is one of a few different types of software servers, and there's also some mobile apps for it that are what I'll describe as Twitter-like. They are not intended to be a direct replacement for Twitter. They have functionality that is similar to Twitter. There are some significant differences, though. Mastodon and the other software that comprises what we call the Fediverse are a series of independently run and managed instances, and you can almost think of them as email servers, right? And in fact, your usernames look very much like an email address. It's your name at your instance name, which is a domain name, and each of these servers are again managed independently by a different person with their own set of rules, and they all federate to each other. So you can be, just like on email, you can be on any one server and communicate with people on other servers. And there's the concept of timelines, private messages. There's also some unique concepts like a local timeline, where you see the happenings of people on your local instance. There's a timeline for people that you follow wherever they're at in the Fediverse, and then there's a federated timeline, which is kind of the it's basically all of everything that's happening that your instance has visibility to.
Let me ask you something, because I'm really, really fresh on it, literally like 5 days ago. So I kind of reach out to the community. I'm like, hey, I'm here. What's next? A desktop app. What's the best way to engage? And of course, being a community that like to help each other, I'm very knowledgeable about technology. That's easy. But then my wife came to me and was like, I canceled my Twitter account. Screw that. I'm going to go to Mastodon. I'm like, okay, you got to be ready for this. It's a little bit different. So my question for you is, you've been there since 2017. So you know the gist of it. Whatever inspired you to do that, that's great. Thank you for that inspiration, by the way. So now that it's kind of turning this and becoming potentially one of the major player in the social media, what's your idea and your opinion on, is it for everyone? Is it really the internet, the alternative on social media to Twitter?
Ooh, that's a hard question.
No, I do that. Sorry.
It is not Twitter, right? And I think there's a lot of people who have migrated over and have been in some ways disappointed. It is not Twitter. It was designed to do, it's designed to, again, as a social media network, but it has different core principles in mind. It's not algorithmically based, right? So the whole point of Twitter was to get things in front of you that drove you to engage. And quite often in the case of Twitter, it was putting things in front of you that that might anger you, frankly, because that would get you to to stay there longer, to post, to view more ads, and so on. And that's really not what Mastodon and the Fediverse is all about. It's really about kind of pure social networking, right? There isn't a lot of financial incentive. There aren't people running for profit, at least at this point, for profit instances.
Right.
And so, yeah, I guess let's be clear. So I guess your point is that there are no ads, right? So that whole timeline feed is not there. And when I get my local feed, it's really from the people I care about and the things that they care that they want to say.
In
So
chronological order.
right. And where I think, at least my experience at Twitter, things get out of hand is the trolls and the assholes and all the other oles that come along, kind of mess things up. So my understanding, very loosely, is that there are rules that you as an instance owner set, and I think the first one is to do no harm to others or something along those lines. But the point is, you kind of say, here's what this community is about. We're going to talk about information security. We're going to come together and share tips and best practices and ask questions or do whatever we do as a community. Do so with a good heart and with a good objective in mind. So talk to us about some of the principles and how, where perhaps Twitter may have tried to solve that and failed through algorithms that may or may not exist in Mastodon. How does that well work?
So it's a great point. I believe, I don't have a whole lot of inside knowledge of what's going on inside Twitter, but I do believe that a lot of their moderation was done algorithmically, based on people reporting things, based on text analysis, and so on. In Mastodon, again, we're like 3 orders of magnitude smaller. So let's just be pretty frank about that too. It's all done by humans. I ended up having to recruit a team of I think it's 7 moderators to help keep the riffraff off the timelines. And we built a lot of it was pre-existing, but we built a set of rules that we feel are reasonable, compatible with our beliefs about how we should treat each other, and then also about how we want others from other instances to treat our people on ours, and then vice versa. So I think they're pretty sane. No gratuitous obscenities, no hate speech. Basically treat each other as you think they would like to be treated.
Oh, you're muted, Marco.
There you go. You think I would know by now to push that button?
You press the other button.
Now, I have to be aware my dogs don't start participating in the podcast. No, that's the thing that I love. And I have to say, I made a joke a couple of days ago, and I said, I don't remember the last time I was so excited to get up in the morning and go on a social media. Was probably back in the time of MySpace. And of course, I'm dating myself here with that. But I did find that excitement. I found that community that is helping you. And I just love the fact that I decide what hashtag I'm going to look for instead of having fed constantly weird stuff that I really don't want to. So I think we all agree with that. But what I really want to hear from you, and I've seen it in these few days, the community. It almost seems like the InfoSec community was just waiting for something like this to happen. I don't know. I think we have tried to do that on Twitter. I know people were having discords going on. I know other people have used some other channel, but I feel like this is really, it was meant to happen, and I'm seeing some beautiful interaction there. So tell me about that. I mean, how is the community contacting you and helping you also?
Fabulous observation. So I've been in the security community for quite some time, and I will say Twitter was a huge part of of the community. Was how we interacted. I've made many friends through Twitter, and I'm super happy that I had that experience. But the direction that Twitter is headed in is pretty antithetical to what a lot of security people hold, kind of close to their heart. The one thing that I was overly aggressive in this, but I felt like I felt a sense of duty to provide a landing spot for people who felt obligated to move, right? For whatever reason that might be, I wanted to give them a spot to congregate and kind of pick up, to the extent you can do that in Mastodon, to pick up and carry on. And it has been just mind blowing. So by way of example, when on October 26th, we had 180 active users on the site. I just looked before this, and we have over 24,000. And that has been has kept me awake most nights. I've learned more about Linux, the innards of Linux and Nginx and Ruby on Rails and Postgres than I've been adminning Linux stuff since the early 1990s, and I think I've learned more in the last 2 weeks than in the 30 years prior.
It's incredible. And I want to get to your podcast, but there's one thing I had a question on, and it's this fedified list. And I'm a little confused at what that is. Is that a specific? Is there a fedified list for the whole federation, or is there one specific for InfoSec.Exchange?
It's basically a way to find people who have both Twitter accounts and Mastodon accounts. Is basically you tag your Twitter account with your Mastodon handle and vice versa, and it basically provides a search engine for people on Mastodon to look up and look for their friends that were on Twitter and reconnect on Mastodon.
Interesting. So I'm going to lead with the community thing, because I'm going to go out on a limb and think that your work with your podcast is also for the community. And so maybe can you tell us a little bit about what you talk about? First, when did you start it? What was the goal? What are some of the things you talk about on the show?
Sure. So back in around 2010, 2011, it's a funny story. I actually was never really on the security trajectory. I was always on more of the CIO trajectory. And the company I was with, which was a security company, was purchased by IBM. And an odd thing happens. I was actually kind of second in line to the CIO at this company called Internet Security Systems. And odd thing happens when you are with a security company and you come into a large organization, like you become branded as the security person. And so that moniker kind of stuck, and I banged around and I embraced it. I mean, it was exciting. I was given just amazing opportunities, and even to this day. But at the time, I started also to get into podcasts. But there were the podcasts of the day were, I would say, very red team focused, very kind of like morning zoo type podcast, not super informative for for people on the blue team side. And this was in the days of the APT1 report and Aurora and all of those things kind of happening like a freight train. And it occurred to me, like, there's a lot of stuff happening in the world that we could learn from, but nobody's talking about it. And so I decided to talk about it. And I think I drug my feet for like 6 months trying to find the perfect intro music. And then once I did it, it's the rest is history. But the focus of the podcast is to, at its core, is to look at what has happened in recent high-profile data breaches. To the extent we know what happened, sometimes we have to speculate, and then try to analyze what could have been done better. And then lately, I will tell you, we sometimes hit dead ends. But what I've found, I mean, for me, it's forced me to talk about and think through like a countless number of different scenarios. So I found it to be super helpful in my professional career because it just give me a lot of context. But I've gotten a lot of feedback from listeners that it's just kind of the methodical and repetitious dissection of what's been happening is helpful, particularly for new people coming into the field, to just get that, to start developing that mindset.
And speaking of mindset, and I actually wrapped a call just before we started recording. Somebody from the community wanted to pick my brain about some of the trends that I've been seeing in the industry. And I'm wondering what you've seen 10 years on. Clearly, cloud is a thing now, but I don't know, what are some of the big changes you've seen in terms, I don't know, team-wise, process-wise, program-wise? I don't know.
It's the attack techniques and the things that are targeted seem to be like a pendulum that swings back and forth between infrastructure being the thing that's attacked, to endpoints, back to infrastructure, back to endpoints. That is one observation. In terms of going forward, the thing that concerns me is, and partly because of where I'm at, but also partly because I just think this is a new area, is what I'll call cloud native attacks. Right? There's only so many different ways ransomware can get into an organization, and there's only so many ways, phishing can be delivered. But and a lot of that stuff has very mature defensive techniques against it. But where I think we are as an industry, not yet fully reckoning is this, this cloud native attack surface of API keys and cloud control panels and whatnot, where today, to an extent, this is already a problem. But today, when people post their API keys into GitHub, and we've by the way found that it takes about 3 hours on average from the time you upload a API key into GitHub until the time somebody is actually actively using it. We find that they're just mining crypto, right? That they take your key and they spin up VMs with with GPUs or what have you, and they mine crypto. But that's going to stop sooner or later, right? We've seen some again, what I'll call cloud native attacks. There was a company named CodeSpaces about 5 or 6 years ago that was completely wiped out. They were in business one day, kind of a GitHub type company. They were in business one day. The next day, they were out of business completely because all of their infrastructure, all of their data, everything was in an AWS account. They actually had designed the account pretty well. They had failover across across regions. They had backups into S3 buckets that were properly protected, but somebody had access to their cloud account and deleted everything, and it was gone.
Wow.
And so
resilient but not redundant.
Exactly. So I think these are the types of things that as more organizations move to the cloud, and attackers are going to adapt. And so we really have to, as defenders and IT organizations, we have to adapt as well.
And speaking to that point, and I've spoken to some folks on this, the shift from an on-prem security team to one that has to protect stuff in one or more clouds and on-prem containers that look different than physical systems they were used to. How do you see that shift taking place? Are we on the right track? People talking about the right things, changing? Do we need to restructure the teams differently? Do we need different training? What are you seeing on that front?
That is a really complicated question. And it is, I think it's pretty situational to the organization. But I will say, one of the big differences I see a lot of, well, look, there's lots of different consumption models for cloud. And I'm going to talk more about kind of pure, compute storage and whatnot. But even there, you see companies who will outsource like they'll move their test labs or the development labs into the cloud because they're not willing to move their production environments. But one of the interesting things about that is, where does a test lab live when it's on-prem? It's behind 12 firewalls and like it's in a closet in the basement and it never sees the light of day. But in cloud, it's fundamentally different. Like there is very little that protects you or protects those workloads from the internet. I mean, they're just right there. It is a button click away, and so it takes both a different mindset, especially in the context of development, but also I'm of the mind that relying on people to always do the right thing is just going to be a recipe for failure, right? You really have to have some some technology enablement to make sure that people are able to consistently do the right thing. And so that's, that might be using CSPM or many of the other acronyms that are evolving.
Yeah.
So about involving people, if there is one thing that Sean and I have been learning since the beginning of ITSPmagazine, which is now like 8 years, something like that. And we wanted to connect the society, the business, the technology, and the cybersecurity. And so I want to pick your brain in not only in the changes that you just described in the InfoSecurity side of things, but also how the business and the security team came together, if they are together now. They're not there yet. So what is your perception about things evolving on the conversation between the business and the security, and security becoming part of the business? I'd love to hear your opinion on that.
It's this is a really interesting time in the history of IT. There is the concept of shadow IT, which I think everybody's pretty bored with talking about at this point. But the reality is there, right? The ability, the frictionless ability for business to consume IT through cloud providers in the form of SaaS or many other things, I think is forcing a pretty radical change in how IT behaves to be a much stronger enabler of business. And so I think I like to think of it as kind of a virtuous upward spiral, right? The IT is becoming easier to consume because of cloud. That's driving IT departments to become more responsive and to some extent chase after. But I think it is having, at least for the more mature organizations, I think a net positive effect of pulling IT much closer into the fold, because otherwise the business is just going to run off and do their own thing without the IT department, and nobody really wants that, because it's typically not efficient, it's insecure, and so on.
Now, I'm wondering, I'm gonna kind of bring it full circle back to the community here, because my sense is, talking about the business and security as part of the business, we're still afraid to talk about our failures and our weaknesses and expose ourselves in that way. And I think we limit those discussions to conferences, for example, right? A talk that's been vetted by an organization and then gets approved by some board that says this is a good talk that we'll let go through. I'm wondering, do you see something like InfoSec.Exchange helping perhaps to shed some light on and be open to, because as you were talking about shadow IT, what is shadow IT when everything's in the shadow, right? So is there a way to maybe take, and I actually made the post the other day, I said, moving from the bird to Mastodon gave me a moment to pause and say, can I change the way that I interact and engage with the community to make it more meaningful, not to just share something because I saw it and I retweeted it, right? But so is there an opportunity here to be a little more honest with ourselves in this way?
It's such a good question. I actually call this the blue team paradox, and I've been to my fair share of conferences, and the one thing that you always see are just these super flashy red team talks, right? And that they're about how some red teamer was able to get into an organization through some novel chain of attacks. But on the blue side, it's much more perilous to have those discussions. I mean, most every one of those is covered under an NDA, right? And you are very, very strongly discouraged from talking about those. So that's a big headwind. On the other side, red teamers are actually incentivized because it's almost like an advertisement. Hey, come hire our firm. We can, look at the cool stuff that we're able to do. And I think that's part of the reason we see what is there. I don't know that Mastodon and the Fediverse are going to change the calculus on that. I think it is vitally important that we do what you just said. And if there is a way for us to enable that, I think so. My co-host on the podcast is actually a pilot, and we talk quite a lot about some of the parallels between aviation and security. And one of the things about aviation is when there's a disaster. Now you can't obviously equate like somebody getting hacked with a plane crash. I don't mean to say that, but in the context of a mishap with an airplane, there's a very public airing of what happened, and the whole industry. Anytime there was a crash or an incident, like it isn't just like that type of airplane, that airline, like the entire industry worldwide learns from it. And I think we have to get there. If we don't get there, we're going to keep repeating the same mistakes that each other are making. And so I feel, as you can tell, I feel pretty strongly about this this topic. I think we absolutely have to get there. I don't know the best vehicle by which we can do that because, again, we all have our NDAs. We all want to stay employed and whatnot, but not talking about them isn't really helping the situation at all.
Yeah, completely agree with you, and I think that the main function that we forgot, maybe because it became a business, the idea of social network. I'm not referring to Facebook, like the movie, but the social network is a concept. It's exactly that, right? It's exactly to communicate, in a conversational way, to talk about problems. Maybe you can pinpoint and exactly say what's going on with your company, but you can throw it out there. And the other thing that I see, and again, I feel like I'm a cheerleader for Mastodon right now because I'm so excited about it, is the fact that you can actually choose. So if I'm a business person or I am a sociology by by trade, like I am, sociologist, and I want to learn about InfoSec and the cybersecurity community and pick their brain on maybe the way that it connects with society, connect to the business. I can actually do that now because I don't have to just throw myself into the middle of the arena with a lot of lions and a lot of noise and really focus on certain conversation. And then maybe my other hobby is music and I'll go into another server. So for me, it's just like going back to the origin. And I'm very excited about this. And I hope that it will be an opportunity for business people that want to learn about security to come and join there. Sean, I mean, this has been your goal the entire time, the business of security. So I don't know if you feel the same, but.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we can certainly connect business, and that's the whole point of this show. But I think there's a broader community that would be interested in what InfoSec.Exchange is doing as well. And yeah, I think it's clearly it's a place to come together and exchange ideas. The domain says that, right? And I want to do this, Jerry. Maybe I don't know if there's something we didn't touch on that you wanted to share before we wrap, but I also want to give you space to put a call out to the community. I don't know what you need to keep InfoSec.Exchange running successfully. If there's anything the community can do to help, even if it's just go read the principles and rules and abide by them, or if there's something they can do beyond that. So any final words and then a call to action for the community to join us.
So just to carry on, and I think it'll dovetail into the final words. There is, I think, a lot of, well, there's two things that are happening right now, right? There's still a lot of grousing about what's going on at Twitter, and that is, that's expected, and hopefully that dies off over time. But there's a lot of like meaningful discussions happening on, and it's not necessarily like what I was talking about. Hey, my company got hacked. Here's what happened. It's, hey, how do you do X? How do you do Y? And people are actually helping each other and not being mean. It's really quite cool. There are other instances. There's IOC.Exchange. You can imagine what they're focused on, and some others. And like, we're not in competition. Like I literally have some of these people now on Signal channels, and we help each other. It is just the most amazing thing that I think I perhaps have been involved in. So it's like you said, it's really exciting. It feels kind of like the early internet when I first started getting into IRC. Maybe not some of the crappy IRC channels, but the more helpful ones.
That's exactly what I wanted you on, and I'm thrilled that you agreed and had the time to do that. So how can we as a community help keep this going?
Yeah, so a couple things. One is, obviously, if you're not there, give it a look. Right, it's again, the address is InfoSec.Exchange. It's pretty self-explanatory. It does take a little bit of getting used to. There's mobile apps for both Android and iOS. I personally prefer the web browser, even on mobile devices. I think it's just it's a better experience, but there's something for everybody. I am dreading the credit card bill, by the way. So I do have I do accept donations. There's a pinned post on my profile if you sign up. I actually I'm working on a blog post that I call the inflationary period, kind of modeled after the cosmic inflation, which caused me to run out and buy six new pretty expensive servers to handle the load. And so I'm waiting for the bill to come and my wife to open it up and see.
That's gonna be a fun moment. You should record that, Jerry.
Yes. There.
It kind of remind me this one about those jokes you see on Instagram where the guy buys the Les Paul guitar and the wife is like, how did you spend that kind of money? It's like, no, they gave it to me for free. I won a raffle. You should say the same thing. I just found this service here.
On a raffle. What's the joke? I heard do whatever the hell you want doesn't mean what it sounds like. No, well, this is super cool, Jerry, and I'm grateful to be on that exchange with you and with the rest of the community, and I'm excited to see it continue to grow and do what it's designed to do, which is to exchange information with each other. And I would encourage everybody to support you. I know you're doing an amazing thing there, and I hope folks hear that and give you some support to make sure that this keeps going. So,
Well, thank you.
ditch the blue check and do a tip instead.
We have a wide range of little verified icons.
I know. I stole your paw verified. I love it. All right. So I don't know when your blog's coming out, but we'll certainly reshare that when you post it. And if you happen to publish that before we produce this, we'll include a link to that. And anything else that you think would be interesting for folks to read in connection to this. So thanks again, Jerry.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And thanks everybody for listening to Redefining Cybersecurity here on ITSP Magazine. Stay tuned for more and all the links, and certainly Jerry's Mastodon InfoSec.Exchange link, so you can connect with him as well. Thanks everybody.
Pantera, the leader in automation security validation, allows organizations to continuously test the integrity of all cybersecurity layers by emulating real-world attacks at scale to pinpoint the exploitable vulnerabilities and prioritize remediation towards business impact. Learn more at pantera.io.
Imperva is the cybersecurity leader whose mission is to protect data and all paths to it with a suite of integrated application and data security solutions. Learn more at imperva.com.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Redefining Security podcast. If you learned something new and this podcast made you think, then share ITSPmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.